Hey, Wonderhussy here. I'm in New Mexico today at a place called Chaco Canyon. Chaco Canyon is an area in New Mexico near the Four Corners region that was once home to a vast ancient civilization that flourished from about 800 until 1150 AD. Even today, 1,000 years after these settlements were abandoned, massive ruins still stand in the desert, and you can hike out and explore them. One of the best ways to see all the sights at Chaco Canyon is on a bike, because the loop is paved and pretty flat and it'll take you to all the major sites. And there's even a couple of trails that you can ride on a bike. So I went to Walmart and bought this cheapy mountain bike to see how I liked it. And it should be just the thing to get me where I want to go. I mean, these buildings were huge. Some of them had up to 600 rooms. And they were amazingly well constructed, considering this was a Stone Age people using Stone Age tools. But Stone Age or no Stone Age, they did have rudimentary versions of today's tools, including a plumb bob and even a level made out of a long, shallow wooden trough filled with water. So what were these ginormous buildings used for? I mean, archaeologists estimate that 2,000 or fewer people lived in the Chaco Pueblos year-round. So what, or who, were all of these rooms used for? Were these buildings ceremonial? Like for some kind of religious ceremonies? Were they administrative? Were they just grand palaces for an idle ruling class or bloated government bureaucracy? Or were they economic? Was Chaco Canyon a giant trading center, and these massive ruins are the remains of the ancient equivalent of a shopping mall? In that case, somebody better call Dan Bell and tell him there's some really dead malls out here. I mean, imagine when someday a future civilization stumbles on the ruins of some of our biggest buildings. Yankee Stadium, those giant public housing projects in Chicago, or the friggin' MGM Grand in Vegas. What are they gonna think we were doing in those buildings? To this day, no one knows what the Chaco civilization was all about, because around 1150 AD, they all simply disappeared. Well, not disappeared in the sense of an alien abduction or the rapture. They simply up and left their amazingly advanced civilization behind and basically scattered to the winds. But why? Why would a people spend hundreds of years building a ginormous, beautiful city and then just abandon it? Well, there's a few theories. Some think another neighboring tribe came in and chased the Chacoan people away in a campaign of violence. But the ranger that we were talking to in the visitor center said that archaeologists haven't found any widespread evidence of violence here. Many think they moved on due to a 50-year drought that started around 1100. I mean, there's not much rain out here as it is, so it'd be easy to see how any fluctuation in rainfall could be catastrophic. And if it went on for 50 years, I would have had no choice but to move. And of course, there are those who believe that the mysterious disappearance of the Chacoan people had something to do with aliens. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but in this instance, their civilization was so bizarrely advanced for its day, I can almost believe these people were beamed up into some crazy mothership. I mean, if they didn't have extraterrestrial help, how did they build these giant buildings? Archaeologists estimate something like 200,000 timbers were used in the construction of the Chaco pueblos. But look around. There are no trees for many, many miles in any direction. The logs they used had to be carried by hand. Remember, they didn't have horses or wheeled carts. They had to carry them by hand for 60 miles from the nearest forest. Who carried them? Did they do it by choice, or were they enslaved? Not only did they have amazing buildings, they also had an amazing system of roads stretching out in every direction, leading to other settlements in the area. Despite the fact that they had no horses or wheeled carts and they did all their travel on foot, some of their roads were 30 feet wide. Why did they build such grand roadways leading into the pueblos? It's a real mystery, and that's what I love about this place. There's plenty to wonder about. I can't believe they never even mentioned this place in all my 16 and a half years of school. I mean, think about this. Some of the buildings that were built by the Chaco civilization were the biggest structures in North America up until the 1800s. Can you imagine? That means these were the biggest buildings in all of North America until they started building all the skyscrapers in New York and Chicago. But these were built stone by stone, all by hand. They also had a pretty good handle on the calendar. Check this out. This is Fajada Butte. And I'm not sure you can see, but there's a little tiny nub at the top of the butte there. Well, I guess they used that little notch to tell what time of the year it was. I guess there's 3 boulders way up there that when the sun passes through those boulders at certain times of year, like on the summer solstice or the autumn solstice, winter solstice, then the sunlight creates these little daggers, and there's a spiral petroglyph up there that the sun dagger marks at a certain place depending on the time of year. Pretty cool that they were able to figure that out. Kind of reminds me of some of the calendars that the Mayans had in their civilization. I mean, this masonry is actually pretty impressive, as primitive as it is. I mean, for it to have lasted 1,000 years. I mean, if you look at some of the ticky-tacky little boxes that are built by Party Homes and KB Homes and, you know, these prefab housing developments that pop up in these cookie cutter formations in the suburbs of Vegas and other places, I have a strong doubt that any of those houses will be around in 100 years, much less 1,000 years. And those homes are constructed using quote unquote modern building techniques. I guess sometimes you just can't beat the old-fashioned way. Look at how amazing the masonry is in these walls. I mean, just perfectly fitted together, all those really skinny little pieces of shale or whatever it is. It's unbelievable. And then the pattern that they created with it, it's mind-blowing. I mean, you'd pay some guy thousands of dollars to build a wall like that for your garden nowadays. And check out the corner. Look how sharp that corner line is. That is true. These guys were not playing around when it came to masonry. I mean, you can see here that after 1,000 years, this wall has started to get a little bit wonky. But, you know, you could say that about just about any wall after 1,000 friggin' years, sitting here with no maintenance. And what's really amazing is that they trust people enough to hike around these 1,000-year-old ruins and not screw them up. I mean, you have to fill out a little permit at the beginning of every hike. It's free. You have to put your name and address. But it's all the honor system. You could totally lie about your name and address and come up here and vandalize it. But thankfully, people are pretty much like I always thought they were. Good in general. And nobody really messes this place up. Well, yet. These ruins are amazing. And what's really amazing is the audacity of some people. Like this guy, looks like his name is Samuel. and he saw fit to etch his name into a 1,000-year-old wall. I don't know about that, Samuel. But then you look at some of these other bricks. Some of these other bricks have graffiti on them, but like this one. Look at this. A.G. Gromer, September 21st, 1899. I mean, it's hard to say if graffiti like that is graffiti or an archaeological record in and of itself. I mean, these are the kinds of questions I like to ask. You know, like people get all fired up about these gangbangers who tag walls. But, you know, then they get all juiced up about these Native American petroglyphs, which is basically the same thing, people carving stuff on a wall. It just depends on how old it is. So now I really like a conundrum like this, where a guy comes in and writes over a really old artifact, but now he becomes an artifact himself. Is he in the wrong? Should his graffiti be protected too? It's interesting to think about. So many questions about this place. So few answers, but that just means there's more to wonder about, and that's part of what makes this such an amazingly interesting place to visit. I really can't recommend it enough. I mean, I'm here in late July and it is hot. I mean, we're camping. There's not much shade in the campground. Well, actually there's no shade in the campground. There's 0 shade, so you have to bring your own. And it's also monsoon season, so we got rained on a little bit last night and the day before. But even with all of those inconveniences, I would come here again in a hot minute. Maybe in the spring or the fall when it's a little more comfortable. But as far as logistics go, it's $15 for a campsite. You get flush toilets, running water. There's drinking water at the visitor center. I think it's a $25 entrance fee to get into the park per vehicle, unless you have a national park pass, like I did. So it's really not that expensive of a place to go. And for that price, you get some amazing history. I mean, I never even knew Chaco Canyon existed. And it was one of the biggest and most advanced civilizations in North America. Why don't they teach this stuff in school? Well, I guess it's up to us to come out and learn on our own.